Welcome, everybody. We'll get started. We have a lot to go through. So what we're going to do is try to get through the slides first, and then hopefully leave enough questions for Q&A. There's so much more that we could have put into here. Wanted to start out with a little bit of context. Jim and I went in September of this year to visit our partners in Tanzania, and this was trip number 9 for us. And it was a delightful trip. And this week we're going to share a little bit with you about what the overall trip flow was and what you do on a trip. And then next week at the Tanzania dinner, I'll be focusing a little bit more on some of the students, some of the scholarships, some of the projects. We'll touch on that a little bit. But if you come to both here and the dinner, you're going to get 2 different presentations, God willing. I wanted to start with just a little bit of background. So Prince of Peace is the part of the St. Paul Area Synod, and Bega Kobega, which means shoulder to shoulder. It's a spirit of accompaniment, and we are partnered with the Iringa Diocese in Tanzania. And so the idea is that we work together, we collaborate together, we work on projects, we have mutual respect for each other, and other congregations around the St. Paul Area Synod have similar partnerships with other congregations in the Iringa Diocese. There we go.
Yeah, so this relationship with our synod and the Iringa Diocese, you can kind of see here with this graphic. You've heard this a lot over the last number of years now about the 3 pillars. And if you want to kind of, another analogy would be, in the past, some of our groups, we brought back some stools, wooden handmade stools. And I think we've got some in the sanctuary and a couple places in the church. So almost like, think of it also as like the 3-legged stool with the 3 pillars. And all of them so much interrelated, and we need to emphasize all 3 of them: the prayer, the presence, and the projects. And that gives both sides, our friends over in Iringa and us back here in the St. Paul Synod, a good framework of how to organize things. And when we talk about our covenants later, you'll see that prayer, presence, and projects are very much highlighted in words on the covenant that we signed and that our partners and friends over there signed. And I can't but help think here on All Saints Day, as I was thinking this morning and thinking a little bit for our presentation, when you figure the history and some of the seeds that were sown for this companion synod and diocese relationship and going all the way down to parish, I can't think but help but a person that we lost this year, Reverend Don Foltz, him and his wife Eunice, who were longtime coordinators when this first started out, where it became more of a parish to parish relationship, where groups from St. Paul were starting to go over. And I couldn't help again think but what an inspiration he was to so many of us here. And especially me, I can remember the first time hearing him at presentations. He said, if you don't want your life changed, do not go to Tanzania. and I will always remember that his inspirational words, the way him and Eunice facilitated and inspired, and again, those seeds. And again, like we've always said, saying yes to these opportunities that God and the Spirit and leaders are bringing in front of us. We said yes over 20 years ago to Bomalang'ombe, and now we said yes to Vikongwa with relationship here in 2020, just as the world changed as we knew it. So
I wanted to set a little bit of context about the structure because some of this plays into our particular trip this time. So in the St. Paul Area Synod, we have Kirsten Leverson, who's the director of BKB now. She reports to the bishop. And on the Iringa Diocese, the director is Pastor Musungu Msigwa. Pastor Msigwa was our interpreter for both of our village visits, and he doesn't only translate the language, he's also a cultural translator for us, so we can make sure that we're not doing anything that we shouldn't be doing or that would be offensive, which is very helpful. Pastor Msigwa also spent a year at Luther Seminary studying, so he gets Minnesota. He was able to explain to our partners what snow and ice looks like and what it was like to drive out on ice. And then also reporting to Kirsten, we have a in-country full-time volunteer missionary. So that's Susan Seidel, who just started in August. So we brought her along on a couple of the things that we did so she could see what the other groups will do. And then on the Iringa side, Frank Mkocha is our scholarship clerk. We send over $1 million back and forth between the St. Paul Area Synod. The St. Paul Area Synod supports around 1,000 students, and that requires a lot of coordination. So Frank keeps everything under control. We also make use of the Synod's accountant, David. And then there's an Iringa committee, which is like a board of directors, a governing board. I'm the chair of the Iringa committee, so some of what I did while I was over there got pulled into meetings. And then we also have a number of affiliates that I'll talk about in another slide that are organizations that have spun up from people who visited there and saw a need. Would help if I used the clicker rather than the laser pointer. So the affiliates, these are groups that have done a need, and I'll talk a little bit more about this next week at the dinner. But the one to mention here is Iringa Hope is a group that does microfinance and agricultural cooperative. And I'm also on the board of directors for Iringa Hope. So some of what you'll see there is doing things with Iringa Hope too. So it was a jam-packed trip. But there's other great organizations like Friends of Haruma Orphanage, Millions of Trees, Radio for Raha, Shoulder to Shoulder, which does healthcare, St. Paul Partners, which does water, Dignity for Daughters does menstrual health and education for girls, and then the Friends of the University of Iringa and Day of Grace provides healthcare and just a day of relaxation for pastors and leaders. So Jim's going to give a geography lesson.
So 8,000 miles away is about how far we travel. And it's two long flights. Traditionally, on all of our trips, we fly into Amsterdam. And on this particular trip, we left on a Monday afternoon from MSP, got into Amsterdam with time change. Obviously, we get in very early into Amsterdam, changed planes, same airline. KLM does the direct flight to Amsterdam. KLM Dutch Airlines also does the flights down to Tanzania, which is in extreme East Africa. And just below the equator. The equator would actually be running through Kenya to the north. So you're in a fairly, much different lighting, much different climate than us Minnesotans. And then we fly first, the plane lands way up in the very northern part of the country near Mount Kilimanjaro in the Arusha area up near Kenya. And then the plane refuels and a lot of people get off the plane at Kilimanjaro. The hikers, the climbers, and then more people get on, and then you have a short, less than an hour flight at night to finally get down to Dar es Salaam on the coast. Then we travel inland.
Want to try to get that?
Sure.
There we go.
Then either the next day, or in our case, this trip, 2 days later, we took traditionally, a lot of groups will take a bus from Dar es Salaam inland to Iringa, and it can be anywhere from 10 to 12 hour bus ride, depending on the road, traffic, and other variables. Very interesting bus ride. This trip, because it was just the two of us, we took a short plane from Dar es Salaam to Iringa. And the interesting part was we thought it was going to be a direct flight from Dar es Salaam to Iringa. Well, we got on the little plane with a few other people, and we found out we were going to be stopping twice at another game park on the way. So we were an hour late getting into Iringa.
Yeah. And then in the Iringa area, Iringa is where the star is there, and the Bomalang'ombe village, which is where Bomalang'ombe and Vikongwa are, is down in the Southern Highlands. So that just gives you a little bit of perspective about where we go. So this is just a few scenes from the village itself. So you can see it's very, very hilly, very lush. When you kind of get off the main road, it's dirt. There's a new paved road, and there's a picture of a gas station. For those of you who have been before, Boma now has a gas station to go along with the paved road. So that was something new to us this time. A little bit about the partnership. So we began the partnership back in the covenant signing was 2002. When we went in 2019, there were a number of preaching points. So what they do is there's a main church, and then there are remote preaching points that are served by evangelists because it's too far for everybody to go. So was Bomalang'ombe, which is always, the main parish is always also a preaching point. There was Nyamatanga, Vikongwa, Mifugo, I think that's Mangalali down there, Alole, I'm sorry, that's Wanzala, Alole, and Mangalali was the newest preaching point in 2002. We found out in 2019 that Vikongwa had grown to a size that they were considering spinning off. So in 2020, that indeed happened. So Vikongwa split off to become its own congregation. They took Mifugo with them. And then they've since created two new preaching points, Mlandegi and Muhu. And then Boma kept Boma, of course, but they kept Nyamatanga, Wanzala, Ilole, and Mangalali. So now there were two different congregations. So that played into our trip and our itinerary. So this is the high level itinerary. Jim mentioned kind of how we did the flights to get there. We spent a day acclimating in Dar es Salaam. The flight to Iringa is at 7 a.m. and you get in the night before at 11 p.m. And I'm too risk averse to rely on that particular, trying to get on that flight. So we spent the day acclimating in Dar.
We're getting older.
So then we flew to Iringa. We did a little bit of shopping there, and then we spent the first weekend out with Bomalang'ombe. Came back on Monday. I visited the Microfinance Institute for Iringa Hope on Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday we went out to Ruaha National Park.
From Iringa to Bomalang'ombe, how far is that?
Iringa to Bomalang'ombe is
30 miles, maybe?
Yeah, about 30 miles.
30?
It's anywhere from in past years, it's taken anywhere from 3 to 4 hours, depending on how often you got stuck. But now it's paved from Kitabaga to Boma, and we made it in 2 hours,
So
which
is that
was
like
amazing.
A taxi or?
No, but vehicles. Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah. So we spent the first weekend with the Bomalang'ombe parish, and then we did 2 days at Ruaha National Park, and then we came back, and then we spent the next weekend with the Vikongwa parish, so that we were able to worship in both places. And then on the way back, we visited another congregation called Ihimbo, which we'll show you some pictures of, and then spent Tuesday visiting the Iringa Diocese. I got pulled into more meetings. Jim did some shopping, visited Huruma Center, and then this time we did the drive back to Dar with the 12-hour day and spent some time in Dar on the way home. So that was our whirlwind trip. So Jim, you want to talk a little bit about the beginning of the trip? Oh, and pictures of our wonderful flight.
Yes, Caryn mentioned, so we decided very early on that we just wanted to, because we hadn't done any international travel during the pandemic and for so long. It had been 4 years since we had a group, 4 of us that had gone over to Prince of Peace in 2019. So we decided, well, let's see what our driver can just take us to a couple spots we haven't been to in Dar es Salaam. So one of the delightful ones was we got to the oldest Lutheran church that's in the city and right on the harbor. And I believe that was built in the early 1900s. And it was, we got a kind of a nice little private tour by a man there, Caryn, me and the driver. And one of the places we had to go, we actually climbed up into the bell tower. There was a staircase up from the balcony, and we also got to see where the newer organ that I think it was a German built organ where they replaced the organ. So very nice new organ, this old church. But yeah, you can kind of see it looking out the harbor. You know, and there we are walking out to one of those planes. I think it's the one, yeah, the one below the sun, and very cramped.
Yes, that's the pilot.
I was very claustrophobic starting out when you figured you're on these big 787s flying across the ocean and then down to Africa, and then to get in a little plane like that.
Yeah, one of the nice things was we used a new, they've got a new transportation company that some of the groups are using. And the owner's tradition is that for the people that are in the flight, he'll pick you up at the airport and then take you to his office, which is Iringa, and then his wife makes us breakfast. Which was, of course, we were an hour late and he was wondering where we were. But then he gave us a tour of their offices. And so this is the picture from the office. And I think for those of you who've been here before, I picked the picture from the wrong direction. One of the different pictures shows you can see the Lutheran Center from there. So one of the priorities for that day when we got in was to do some gift shopping. So we did a fundraiser before we left to raise some funds for some gifts over there. The biggest priority was we wanted to purchase a piki or a motorbike for Vikongwa, because most people don't have transportation over there, and it would be something for the parish to use. We blew away our goal. So we definitely were able to get that piki. So in addition, we purchased some books. There's it's a mission that was started by Scandinavians, so some Danes and Norwegian Lutheran church over there, called Soma Biblia, which means read the Bible. And they have a ton of educational resources that are available primarily in English. Some of them are bilingual. So we put quite a hefty order together that included there's a Bible commentary, an African Bible commentary that we got for all of the evangelists and pastors. And then we purchased a wide range of like Sunday school books, devotional books for all different ages to give to each of the preaching points. So that was the book purchase. We also purchased 15 soccer balls to give to the schools and to the preaching points. And the soccer balls there are an evangelism tool. Because the kids see the other kids playing with this nice soccer ball and they want to know a little bit more, and it brings the kids into church. We also knew that we wanted to buy some rice for Huruma Center, which is the orphanage. And then we also had a little bit left over for a cash gift to the secondary school and Huruma Center. And then we also had a little bit more that we decided to identify some needs as, you know, what needs are we going to discover when we're there. So I'll talk about those when we get to those slides. So when we're there, we talked a lot about parish visits. So I wanted to give a high-level overview of what happens. So first of all, we have a welcome of some sort. And Peter, if you will click the button for me. So that's just a sample of the kind of welcome you get. There's also usually like a ceremony. We got shirt, Jim got a shirt and I got a dress as part of the welcome ceremony. We have a chance to share meals together, many meals together. We visit preaching points, we worship together on the Sunday morning. There's always a partnership meeting. And then we get a chance to go and observe the projects and observe daily life. So one afternoon, we just hung out on the porch and watched the sunset. Just lovely. And you see worship there, and then a little bit of sample of food. For the preaching point visits, they generally follow the same thing. First of all, there's a welcome. That's from the Bomalang'ombe preaching point, which is one of the Vikongwa's preaching points. And what they're singing, you may have heard the words Karibu and Wageni, and that's welcome guests.
Do you join in with them and start dancing?
We attempt to.
Okay.
I broke my pinky toe a couple days before we left, so I wasn't doing as much dancing this trip, but so then we we'll get a chance to we'll get introductions of the leaders and sometimes the evangelist family. This is the evangelist family, but the church leaders they'll all introduce themselves. Generally, there's also some additional music. There's the giving of gifts. So here's some baskets. So, we'll get things like baskets, ugali spoons, fabrics. Some of them are for us personally. Some of them are for the congregation. And then generally afterwards, they might show us projects. So in this case, this was Mwandegi, and the pastor and the evangelist, who's also the partnership chair, was showing us where they purchase land where they can build a more permanent structure. So we'll see some things like that. And then one of the real highlights for me, I'm a geek, is the partnership meeting. And so we get together with a partnership meeting. They prepare a printed report. We've actually got some samples of things like the timetable and such up here, the printed report, but they'll give a detailed report about what's going on in the parish. And then we actually brought our 2022 addendum. So we gave them a little bit of here's what's going on at Prince of Peace. We were able to use this to talk about the tiny homes. There's an article by Lee Thornton about Tanzania. There's a great article about the youth. So we talked a little bit about some of the joys and some of the challenges that we're facing. For our meeting on October 1st, they were all praying for us, that we would have a good outcome for the meeting. So we do a lot of sharing. This is the Bomalang'ombe Partnership Committee, and then this is the Vikongwa Partnership Committee. And one of the things that we did this time at the partnership meeting was we did the covenant signing. So this was the first time we visited Vikongwa. We wanted to sign the covenant. And when I was reading through the covenant, it said that we're supposed to actually mutually review the covenant every 3 to 5 years to see if we still want to do this. So before we left, we signed for we had Peter sign both of the covenants for the two of us. And then at the partnership meeting, their partnership committees voted on whether they thought the pastors should be allowed to sign this. Pastor Twele at Boma said, well, I would sign this, but I don't think I should be the one to decide to sign it. It needs to be the partnership committee. So they unanimously agreed to sign it. And then at Vikongwa, the partnership committee, they all double approved because they all raised both of their hands in approval. So we have the signing of the covenant. So in the frames up there is the English version of the covenant instead of the Swahili version. And I just realized Jim was supposed to talk about this line.
That's okay. I just wanted to at least because the pictures are you got multiple pictures and a lot to look at on these screens, but I wanted people to notice here on the one picture for Vikongwa, that cross that Caryn is outlining there with the laser is one of the crosses we brought over in one of our group trips we brought over that Tom Rockney had made from our recycled past altar rails from Prince of Peace. So we that's just an example. Some of the other preaching points have those little crosses. So he had made those for all the preaching points at Bomalang'ombe.
So a little bit about highlights of the Bomalang'ombe visit. This is Jim and I, and Pastor Msigwa, our translator, and then our driver, Godfrey. So first of all, the parish visit. So Bomalang'ombe, that was visiting old friends. You know, we've been there. This is our 9th time we've been there. So we're connecting with people that we've met many times before, you know, seeing kids grow up. You know, a lot of familiar faces, and it's a really well-established congregation with a lot of great projects going on. We generally start with getting the timetable, and immediately there were a couple of changes we needed to make because they had us doing eating and then doing a welcome, and then we were going to go visit the goats, and we were going to visit the business center and then have dinner and pretty much be done. Well, there was a funeral that afternoon. And in Tanzania, when there's a funeral, everything stops. Everybody in the village goes to the funeral. So we had the welcome ceremony, and then we kind of hung out a little bit towards the end of the funeral, and then we went into the end of the funeral, and we went down for the burial service. So I've given Anne a lot of details on what a Tanzania funeral looks like. But it was an amazing experience, and then we did some of the other visits later. In addition, when Pastor Msigwa looked at the schedule, he said, "Oh, we're leaving Monday. I see that we've got a devotion at 6. We've got breakfast at 9, except all of the pastors are supposed to be in Iringa at 8:30 for a pastors conference." So it's like, okay, we don't worry about breakfast. We're going to book it at 6 a.m. Head on out to Iringa, you know, first thing Monday morning. We'll get breakfast at the Lutheran Center. So that's what we did. So we just kind of adjusted our schedule based on what needed to be done.
We left at 6 a.m. sharp, departing the parish in the fog, and with that tarmac road, the new tarmac road, we were back to Iringa to get breakfast at the Lutheran Center by 7:45. It's less than 2 hours.
It was amazing. Good driver. You know, we were greeted by the church van, had branches on it. There's some peekies up there. This is the pastor's wife, and then Zaina Luvago, who is the one of the evangelists. So they're giving me my dress there. It's one of just an adorable picture. And then this is an example of some of the youth doing the youth choir, which is dancing during worship. Jim, you want to talk briefly about this?
Yeah, so preaching points is always a very big priority on our visits. It's kind of the expectation. We have to make sure we get to all the preaching points. So for the Bomalang'ombe preaching points, we visited Mangalali, Wanzala, Nyamatanga, and Alole, all on the Saturday that we were there that weekend. So all 4 of them. So we had in our Land Cruiser that Caryn, me, Pastor Msigwa, and Godfrey, we had we had some of our friends loading up in the back of the vehicle too. So we had a full vehicle as we made our rounds, and then they have their own van too. So they had a full van, we had a full vehicle. And then it's just a real highlight to be able to get around to all of the places that are very familiar, like for us, for all of our visits. One of the things on the Bomalang'ombe, that's considered a preaching point in itself, the main station, they call it. So that's actually the one where we worship on Sunday. But you can kind of see the Mangalali being the newest preaching point. It's a very, kind of a wood structure. You can see through the boards when you're inside of the structure, and they hope, of course, to get a brick structure at some point, but that's kind of where they're kind of the startup. Notice the new, go back.
Sorry.
Notice the new floor at the main church.
How long are the services really?
Oh, 3, 2 to 4 hours, however long it takes.
That's quite a long time.
Yeah. In terms of some of the other things that we did while we were there is, we met with the widows group and the women's economic development group. The widows are raising goats. That's been very, very successful. So we got a chance to go visit some goats and some widows. The widows are also branching out. They're now making these types of oval baskets. And I actually brought home 3 baskets like this for commission, and then we're having several others made into purses as well that they're looking to sell. So that's a new thing they're branching out to. The women's batik group, they're finding that they don't have as much of them. They're having trouble finding a market for it. So the women's economic group is now planting what they call Irish potatoes, which is like a russet potato.
Russet.
Next to Ring of Hope, one of my goals for Ring of Hope was we're hoping to put together some videos to promote the microfinance and the ag. So beforehand I said, I'd like to interview on tape 4 people that would be comfortable doing so. So first of all, we met with their leadership team, and then I had video interviews with 4 of their members. Christopher, I believe he's great. He's an evangelist. This is his woodworking shop and his fundi who works for him. So he's got a lot of different things. Here's Rebecca has a potato farm, and she's the president of the microfinance. Godi is the president of the AMCOS, and he's built a couple of houses for rent. And then Venon Salomo is a retired evangelist, and he does a lot of farming, and he's also on what's called a joint AMCOS board. So more to come on that. I got a lot of really great video and some great pictures for some promos to come. Then we had a meeting with it was actually set up as a meeting with the parents and the guardians of the scholarship students. So a couple of the grades were on holiday, so we didn't get a chance to meet a lot of the students, but and I'll talk about this more at the dinner next week, but we got a chance to meet the parents. And what it turns out is that a lot of our scholarship students are actually they're living with not their parents. So it's there might be an orphan, and it's very, very common if there's like an orphan or a family that's struggling, other family members will take them in. So a lot of the scholarships will go to orphans or others that need more help. And just one quick story. This gentleman here is one who last year we gave a scholarship for a 1-year certificate program in livestock management. Now he's going to university for the same program. And as it turns out, he also collected the gift we gave on behalf of, I think, a sibling that he's taking care of. So it goes around. And then when we visited this secondary school, we did meet a few of our sponsored students from BOMA there as well. But it was just a joyful thing. And we gave the students the pictures that we had signed, and then also there's like a little daily devotional book that we gave them.
The cards.
Yeah, the cards that we had signed before we left. There's a couple of the other projects. So they're hoping to build a new church in Boma. And so they showed us the plot of land that they had already purchased, where they're going to purchase the church. And they're hoping it's going to have a modern church with a balcony. And then right next to it, similar to us, there was a house property that they wanted to purchase. And so the Evangelist house is like right there, and then this was a house that they hoped to purchase for future expansion, but also for rental property. And so some of the funds that we did have left over, we will use that to help them purchase that lot. So it's like, oh, our property there, already here, it works. Mangalali is building a new modern church, and so recently some of the building funds that we sent over purchased tin sheets, and the evangelists are helping construct this. And then we've also helped upgrade evangelist housing, so things like adding fancy ceiling, closed-in ceilings, and then lighting. This was one of the evangelist houses that has a really fancy a fancy lighting area. So they kind of show us some of the projects that have changed since we were there. And then a real delightful visit was to the business center. So they have plans to expand a business center. They've created the first phase, which includes a cafe. So these pictures are from the cafe. It was closed because it was Friday and it's being rented by Seventh-day Adventists. So they close on Friday and Saturday. So we did a couple of simulated cafe pictures there. And then the stores are here. This is like a farming supply store. And then there's a women's beauty parlor, and then a men's barber shop. And these places were hopping. There was music going. People were having fun with the beauty salon and there. And then this is an area where they want to expand. They own this building here that they're hoping to convert to shops. And then this area right here is where they want to expand. Eventually, they want to have 15 stores. And this is, once again, rental income that they can use to support their ministry. Okay, so that was the Whirlwind Boma. Then was kind of fun, Ruaha Park.
So midway through our trip, and which has proved to be a pattern for the people from Prince of Peace who have gone on group travel before, is we get to Ruaha National Park, which is a real nice distance, a convenient distance for a half day or few hour drive from going west from Iringa. And so just a chance to have a little rest, recreation, and enjoy another part of God's great creation. One of the highlights for this time was it was the first time our second game drive, which was a morning game drive, we were getting reports, our driver and guide in the vehicle were getting reports of wild dog sightings. So that was the first time. We've been to this park now 9 times, and that was the first time we had ever seen these rare wild dogs.
Also, when we went out to Ruaha, we brought Susan Seidel with us so that she could see what it was like to be out at the game park. And then the next weekend we went to Vikongwa. We also brought Susan with us then so she could see what a village stay was like. So Vikongwa, was the new parish. The pastor's new. It's his first call, so he's right out of seminary. All of the evangelists are new. The one commonality is that one of the former evangelists, Diana, is now the parish secretary. Actually, that's Diana. So she's the parish secretary. She's formerly an evangelist. So this was delightful because we got a chance to meet a whole bunch of new friends. We got a chance to see 2 preaching points that we had never been to before. And Lee and Sandy, the Vikongwa visit reminded me an awful lot of our 2004 visit. You know, just kind of, it had that kind of vibrant feel. Also, Vikongwa is close to a couple of secondary schools, and some of their leadership are teachers at the schools. So we actually were able to have good conversations with several of the people there, because the command of English, our Swahili is horrible. So we had enough people there who could speak enough English to have some conversation. So then we have our preaching points. Jim, do you-
So getting a little bit to the topography and a little context. The Vikongwa main station down there on the bottom part of the slide is one that those of us who have gone representing Prince of Peace, we've always gone to Vikongwa when it was a preaching point. Very familiar with that site. You can actually, from the hillside that Vikongwa preaching, or well, now Vikongwa parishes, you can actually see over towards Bomalang'ombe. You can visually make out Bomalang'ombe's main station, the church, from the Vikongwa Hill. So it's just over. So they're really not that far away, but of course with the topography in the highlands, you're up and down, and of course by the time we left Bomalang'ombe, that's where the tarmac road ended. So we were going to Vikongwa back on a lot of narrower, dusty, and very rugged roads. Picture and doing some of these preaching points, if you were driving on some of them, probably some of the most rugged Forest Service roads, maybe like up in northern Minnesota. That's how some of these roads are. Woohoo was truly an adventure getting there. Of all the trips that we've taken in buses, coaster buses and all, Woohoo was very much a very meaningful one for us this time as far as the most remote one.
For those who have been here before, the road to Woohoo makes Nyamatanga look like a super highway. We had a chance to visit the secondary schools. I'll talk more about this next week, but there's the Bomalang'ombe Secondary School, which is owned by the Iringa Diocese, where most of our sponsored students go. And then right next to Mifugo is the government secondary school, Ipeta. And one of the evangelists at Vikongwa is a teacher at Ipeta. So we visited both places and gave soccer balls to both. We also had a similar meeting with the parents and the guardians. There's 3 students were sponsoring it from Vikongwa, and they were actually all on break, and we got a chance to meet all 3 of them in person. One wants to be a pastor, one wants to be, I think, a teacher, and then the other one wants to be a soldier. Yeah, a soldier. And then Pastor Msigwa explained a little bit about the signed cards and how much that means. And then we did a group picture of the students with their parents and guardians. We also had a chance to meet, so the Widows Goat Project, when Vikongwa spun off, they took, well, the widows that were part of those congregations, they took 4 goats with them, and they're now up to 17 goats. So we got a chance to see a couple of the goats and then the place where the widow stores them. And then there was a widows meeting, so they all came and talked a little bit about the goats and what it means to them economically. They said one of the side effects of the goats is that now they're having babies, and it's entertainment because the baby goats are just fun to watch. The main project that we've supported so far is upgrading the pastor's house. So one of the requirements for spinning off a new congregation is they have to provide a good home for the pastor. And so they had purchased a house right next to the church. And this is what it looked like in 2019 when we visited. So you can see the open roof, dirt floor, unpainted walls. So since then, they've got the walls painted, they've enclosed the ceiling, they've added electricity. And so there's some changes they still want to make, but this is one of the main projects. And what I didn't mention earlier is the pastor has twin girls. They were like 14 months, just adorable. And one of the things that we did purchase with the at the Soma Biblia was they had a couple of bilingual board books, like a Bible for toddlers and a Bible for babies. And so we bought 2 of those, one for each girl. And we had a lot of fun watching the twins. We also had, this was kind of new, they had a children's meeting. So first of all, there was a meeting, the kids from Vikongwa came and they sang for us, they were adorable. We went back and ate, and then they said, oh wait, the kids from Landegi Preaching Point have just come to visit, so they need to sing for you too. And then these are the kids from Muhu Preaching Point, and this is just too cute for words. Yeah. So that was the overview of Vikongwa. Multiply that times 10, 12, 13. So then just kind of quickly at the end of the trip, because I know we want to leave a few minutes for questions. On the way back, we stopped at Ihimbo, which is partnered with St. Stephen's in West St. Paul. This is our goddaughter. She just finished Form 6 and she just started at the university. So our first trip in 2004, we were asked to be sponsors. And so
She's 20 now.
she's 20 now. We're not that old. I don't know how this happened. And so we had a chance to meet with them, which was always a delight. And then the final day, I'll have Jim talk a little bit about our last day in Oringa.
So we had a diocese visit on our last day in Oringa. So we're seeing again $1 million tree project where they grow the pine seedlings for the Million Tree Project. That for the pine seedlings, they don't charge the parishes anything at all to bring the seedlings back to their villages and parish areas. Radio Baraha. This is over on that slide is a new school that is about to open in sometime in 2024 for a primary school at a Haruma Center. So it'll be a safe school for some of the children to attend school right on the grounds there. And then here's a couple pictures with the rice. While Caryn was in meetings that day, Godfrey took me down to Ringatown. We bought, I think it was 150 kilos of rice. And that's the 3 bags that we ended up. There's always a need for rice at the Haruma Center. So that's kind of one of our traditions. We always bring rice as a gift.
And then finally, given that we knew we would have more stuff when we came, we decided to drive to Oringa rather than fly because there's weight limits. And the road there is gorgeous, even though it's a really, really long trip. And so we've got some pictures there of some of the roads. Lee and Sandy, the basket trees are still there. Along the side of the road, there's one place where they just have a whole bunch of baskets for sale on trees. And then a few pictures of Dar es Salaam. We didn't get a chance to do a lot of auction shopping in Oringa this time because so many meetings. So our last day in Dar es Salaam, we spent and did a little bit of auction shopping there. And just for those who have been there before, we might have come home with 1 or 2 Tangaweezes for auction, maybe. So we had a chance to visit, and then we flew out on Thursday night to get back on Friday. I also wanted to just kind of quickly show. So a lot of times people ask, what does housing and food look like? So, there we go. This is the Wistas Inn in Dar es Salaam. This is the Lutheran Center. We actually had a really, really nice place at the Lutheran Center. It had a living room along with it. This is at Ruaha. And then these are the rooms at Boma and at Vikongwa. We stayed with the pastor. So we stayed at the pastor's house, and it gets really chilly at night. So they have these really thick, lush blankets to help keep us nice and cozy. So they treat us very well. And then I took a lot of breakfast food pictures for some reason. So various breakfasts, the Lutheran Center, Wistas. This was in Vikongwa. These were some meals at Ruaha. And then there's a place called Sunset Hotel where you can go up and have a drink, have dinner, and just watch the sunset. So in terms of kind of what's coming up next, as I'm sure you've heard, we have our Tanzania dinner next week. It's at 5:30. We're also doing some prep on Saturday at 2 o'clock. We're making samosas. So if anybody wants to come and help with that, we're always looking for help, the signups in the narthex. We're also looking to see who might be interested in our next visit. It might be possibly 2025, unless I get tons of interest, in which case it might be 2024, but we definitely want to go back no later than 2025. So if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about the trip and what that entails, I've got a sign up sheet here or out in the narthex, and then I'll schedule something to give people that might be interested in our next trip a little bit more information. And with that, we've got about 5 minutes before there are questions. So Roger.
You want to mention about the auction next
Oh,
time?
yes. So part of the dinner is we have a silent auction, and we've purchased a number of items in Aringa for these are just a few of them. Here we've got a nativity set. We've got
auction items. Right back.
full of auction items there. So all of those funds will be used for scholarships and then other needs within the parish as well. So we've got some things from Nina's Crafts, some scarves, some stuffed animals, some little baskets and things, and some Tangawizi. We smuggled back.
You mentioned the congregation's buying piece of land.
Mhm.
Is that from other individuals, or does the government still own a lot of land there? or-
Yeah, in this case, it's individuals. And the interesting story about this one is the person who built that house, when they built the house, it didn't have a bathroom. And so the evangelist house right next door, they haven't had an outside door to the bathroom, and they let that person who owned that land use that bathroom. And so they were really amenable to selling the house. Bathroom ministry.
Caryn, how do they get their electricity? Is it solar or? is it
Yeah, good
generator?
question. So how do they get their electricity? It depends. So in the main town, it's hydroelectric. So there's a dam close, and there's an Italian NGO that helped provide some of that electricity. Up at some of the remote preaching points like Nyamatanga, it's solar. And one of their evangelists they sent to Votech school to learn to become an electrician. So all of the preaching, or most of the preaching points and the evangelist houses and the pastor's houses are actually the electricity in there was actually done by one of the evangelists. Just cool.
See a lot of Western dress in the
Yeah.
pictures. Are they giving up traditional dress, or?
You see the women that you see in the villages will still wear mostly the traditional dress, although it might be like a t-shirt with the fabric wrap. The men most of the time have worn the just kind of like a suit or a regular shirt, t-shirt. It's changed a little bit since then, especially in Aringa town, but it kind of varies too. You also see fun men's jackets and women's jackets that are made out of the great Tanzanian fabrics too. Great, other questions? Great, well, thank you for your time and your attention, and thanks for all the support for our Tanzania partners. They all expressed, please send back our love to the members of Prince of Peace. We pray for them, we think about them, and know how much that our partnership with them means to them and to us. So thank you. Well,